Hey, welcome to the channel. We hope that you enjoy today's stories and check out the chapters on the video to see all the stories for today. But before we get into this video, subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon to get notified when we release a new video. So let's get into the video.
Moving into a haunted house. I, a 29-year-old female, am in the final stages of purchasing an old farmhouse. It's a humble 100-year-old house on 157 acres in rural, northern Canada. It's a 3-hour move from my current place, which I had to, unfortunately, leave due to a physically abusive relationship. This area stood out to me as it's relatively close to where my grandparents lived and farmed. It's perfect, and everything I want in a home. Yesterday, I had a tour of the property with the current owner who has lived there for the last 10 years. The house has 2 doors, and when I asked why he doesn't use the side door that has a large mudroom, he casually mentioned his daughter, early 20s, is scared of the basement. Jokingly, I said, "What, are there ghosts?" To which he replied,
Yes, actually there is.
My next question was, are they good or bad? And he reassured me they were good. He then told me he sees a man downstairs sometimes and occasionally sees him outside walking towards the shop. There's a woman that spends her time in the kitchen when he sees her. He has never seen the children, but he often hears them playing outside. I asked if there was any family tragedy that occurred on the property, and he said that the only story he knows of was the original owners who built and homesteaded there lost a child at a young age, and because it was winter, they had to store him in the cistern in the basement for the winter until the ground thawed. I didn't have any negative feelings in the house. I did feel a sense of comfort, but I've also had bad energies in a house previously, so I can't lie and say I'm not a little nervous. A good friend of mine is clairvoyant, and I brought it up to her. She assured me that they are not harmful spirits, and they have attachments to their first home. She said she sensed they liked me. She went on to say that the current owner advised me of them out of respect for them. There are no disclosure laws of haunted houses where I live, and as long as I live with respect to them, everything will be good. Is there anything I should be mindful of when moving in? Anything I should do? Any kind of smudge or anything I should place in the home? I've heard not to put a mirror facing my bed, and I'm just wondering if there is anything else I can do. I don't want to push them away, but I don't want to open myself to anything negative either. This really is a first for me, purposely moving into a place with known entities living in it. I will also say, I live alone for the majority. I have dogs and cats, and a new boyfriend who seems to be a little uneasy about this news. However, my mantra for the last few months has been, I am capable of anything. I got out of an abusive relationship that should have killed me, and here I am. I have been living my life with a newfound empowerment, so I feel confident I can get through whatever life throws at me.
There were 3 knocks on the door, and no one was there. So, to start off, this happened back in 2020. Right after my grandfather passed, his house was completely empty. He had passed away inside the house. He left behind a dog, which would run away to return back to my grandparents' house any chance he got. The house was just down the road from ours, so it wasn't much of a problem. Occasionally, we would let the dog in the house so he could feel at home. One day, me and a cousin decided to stay the night. For a while, we just hung out and played some card games. After a while, we heard 3 knocks on the outside of the front door. At first, we thought someone was at the door, so we answered. No one was there. No cars in the driveway either. The dog came from the other room barking, so we know it wasn't just us. The next day I told my brother, and he informed me that my grandfather always knocked 3 times. My brother demonstrated the knocks, and they sounded just like the ones we heard. The moral of the story is, I believe it was my grandfather's ghost knocking, maybe to mess with us or scare us, or maybe to let us know he was still around. Both of my grandparents were heavy smokers, and occasionally I'll smell cigarette smoke, nowhere near a smoker. I take that as a sign that my grandparents are near. Edit, I'm not sure I believe in the supernatural. I believe we can't know what happens after death until we experience it ourselves. That being said, this is just meant to be a light-hearted story about my experiences. I've also had experiences with what I believe were skinwalkers, but again, it could have been anything else. This is just what I've seen and my explanation for it.
If you're enjoying today's video, smash that like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more videos and interesting stories. Now let's get back to the stories of our lives.
I went back to the time I was a child and the experience was too real to be a dream. I'm new to Reddit, so I'm not sure exactly where to post this. Apologies for the length. This was the weirdest experience I have had to date, and I still get choked up and emotional when I think about it. It was 2010 and I was 25 years old, living at home with my very supportive parents who were helping me through college, after previously dropping out of high school and having two amazing children. It was an early autumn afternoon, around 4 to 5 p.m. I was in my room, doing some homework on my laptop, at my desk. The desk faced the wall directly across from my bed, and my older style box TV was on top of my dresser to the left of my desk, about 2 feet away. I was, as usual, procrastinating doing my homework, so I was mindlessly watching some dumb TV show. Because my TV was so close, I stood up instead of using the remote to change the volume on my TV. As I reached out my left hand to press the button, as if a switch flipped, my entire environment changed. This affects me still to this day. I still feel in my soul that something strange happened. I didn't hallucinate, it was real. I was back in my childhood home, some 20 miles away, and seemingly 18 years in the past. I was standing in front of the only hallway closet in the one-bedroom house that I grew up in. The house was over 100 years old, and the closet was one of those with doors that slide open on tracks. You know, the ones that the doors never go back on the tracks, right, so you must be careful of how you open it. Anyway, the door to the closet was open, and my already outstretched left arm was reaching toward a very distinct item. When I was little, my mother had this perfume bottle that, for some reason, I was absolutely in love with. The perfume itself was cheap and didn't smell particularly good to me. The bottle was glass, and shaped like a bird, maybe a dove. Its wings were up and outstretched. It was beautiful, but it had a broken wing. I probably broke, being the curious and clumsy child I was, and still am. So, there I was, one moment in my somewhat modern bedroom in 2010, the next in the old one-bedroom hallway across town, back in time 18 years. I was there, I saw the bird bottle. I was within inches of grabbing it. My heart melted for that dumb little bottle of stinky perfume shaped like a one-winged dove. Oh my god, this is not a Fleetwood Mac song, I swear. Before my hand could actually make physical contact with that precious bird, the switch flipped again. I was back in front of my TV, outstretched left hand and all. My mind could not comprehend what had just happened, and I felt immediately sick and dizzy. I was in such a state of shock and confusion that I just walked out of my room, down the hall, into the living room and out into the front yard. I could do nothing but lurch over, hands on my knees, and try desperately to catch my breath, but mostly my sanity. This experience was so jarring, so real. I was physically in front of that open closet, reaching for that damn bird bottle, but then I wasn't. I wasn't particularly stressed about classes, it was community college. I'm not prone to hallucinations and was stone cold sober when this experience happened. I've only told a few people because honestly the subject of momentarily teleporting through time and space doesn't come up in conversation often, and I only know a few people that I can tell. Has anyone had anything like this happen? I still have no explanation, and it might have just been a weird break in my psyche, but it was not a dream, and I was not under the influence of anything or under any unusual stress.
Was there when it was decided to pull the plug on a family member? Feel like they stuck around. Family members had COVID and pneumonia, leading to a struggling battle of being put on and kept on a ventilator. After some time, the decision was made to pull them off the ventilator and let them move on. In support of the family, We were all in the room while the ventilator was removed. We watched as they struggled and held their hands. Some families prayed, others silent, all crying. It was a very heavy situation. One that will stick with me for the rest of my life. Right after they passed, I had what seemed like a moment of reaching out and touching their spirit as it was moving on. I'll admit it could have been a coping mechanism to help deal with the situation, but it felt real. Like I touched their soul to help them move on, or to give them comfort, or maybe just to say goodbye. I don't know why I imagined that moment. Since this happened, I feel that family member with or near me. My wife was in the bathroom on the other side of the house with no one else in the house. Cooking on the stove, I heard the most distinct cough sound that the past family member always made. Behind me and mostly in my left ear. I had to completely stop what I was doing and look around. I was kind of baffled, honestly. How do you hear a perfectly distinct cough behind you when alone? I talked to my wife, and we both kinds of agreed it was a stressful moment in our lives, and I'm sure it is a part of dealing with it, until recently. My wife and I were sitting on the couch working, and out of nowhere, we heard that distinct cough again, coming from between us. My wife and I make eye contact, and we both knew at that moment what that sounded like. To reassure you, we both agreed that neither of us coughed. Ever since this moment, my wife tells me she sometimes feels the blanket is being pulled tight or trying to be pulled off of us. I've noticed this as well. Other times I feel intentions in the bed as if someone is putting weight on the bed and moving along. When this happens, it usually feels like something touching me. Not hard. None does it feel to be malicious. I mentioned this to my wife, and she froze up and explained she's been having these exact experiences as well. Now currently, for some reason, I feel them near. Like I'm being watched. His wife doesn't feel this. When I feel him near, I swear I become a bit clumsier. Dropping stuff, knocking over stuff, overall, a little messier. It just feels strange. We've both heard the distinctive cough a few times, both together and separately. I can't seem to put my finger on what's going on. Almost like I'm being watched over, or they are trying hard to be Molly Souses, but are unable to. Does anyone have any input on this? My working theory based on intuition is, maybe I invited a past family member to stay with me unintentionally, not knowing what I was doing.
Me and my friend made a mistake with an Ouija board that we made. So, I really don't tell this story because the thought of it makes me uneasy. It's something I don't tell people. Not even my fiancé knows. He wouldn't believe me. But I thought I'd share it here. So here I go. So, my friend and I wanted to make an Ouija board and try to communicate with the dead. I think we were 13 or 14 at the time. We made one out of a piece of paper and we use a guitar pick as the thing that moves. Sorry, I don't remember the name of its ATM. But anyways, we were playing with the homemade board in my bedroom because if my parents knew they would end me. We asked your typical questions and it didn't move. Then it started moving and honestly, I thought my friend was just moving it. I'm pretty sure she was. We each had a finger on it. We decided to give up and go for a walk and play at the creek down the street. I realize now that I'm older, we never said goodbye. We left the guitar pick in the middle of the board, and when I came back it was on yes. I really just didn't think anything of it. I was an ignorant child that didn't know what I was really messing with. This is the part that's hard to talk about. So that night I laid down to go to sleep. And I started to feel uncomfortable, so I got up and opened my bedroom door. Then I laid back down, and after a while, I fell asleep. All of a sudden, my bedroom door slammed shut. I nearly crapped myself. I quickly stood up and ran to the door and opened it. I was shaking and about to cry. My parents yelled at me for the door slamming. So, I piled a bunch of stuff in front of the door to prevent it from slamming again. So, I laid back down in my bed and eventually fell asleep again. I wake up sweating and my heart is racing. And I feel nothing but pure fear. Then I get a feeling there is something at the end of my bed. All of a sudden, I see footsteps, imprints in my mattress coming towards me. I screamed and jumped out of bed and ran downstairs and told my father what I did and what happened. He took a Bible, went upstairs and read some verses, and blessed my room. I didn't sleep at all that night. I kept my bedroom light on. My father was pissed, but he didn't tell my mother. We haven't spoken about it since. I'm not a huge believer in God, but I know whatever was in my room was evil. And I will never touch an Ouija board ever again. I have learned a lot about them since. They are not something to mess with, especially if you don't know how to properly use them. I was a stupid child. But I guess it's an interesting story for others. I also have comforting spirit stories as well.
If you've enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and check out more videos from the channel.